Not a once-in-a-million comeback because it's literally 3 of 1,643. But that doesn't give it enough credit, nor does it give Indiana enough credit for doing it twice in a 7-day span. What the Halliburton? Also, news of the afternoon from Golden State. Steph Curry out 1 week. Let's go around the horn. Whoa. Last 48 seconds defies all logic. I could do a 30 for 30 on Naismith's putback dunk. That was an inflection point. Cleveland's turnovers, Max Strus is particularly brutal. No shots attempt by the Cavs the final 48 seconds. And then the league's most overrated player, as voted on by players, take that for motivation, Tyrese Halliburton. His missed free throw, though. Check this out. Freeze it. Did he get in too quick? Either way, what followed after, you've seen a million times by now, the coldest shot in Pacers history. Another crown for Halliburton. His dad must have torn up his own living room, yelling at the fireplace mantle. Kenny Atkinson on the Cavs collapse. We ran out of gas. J.A. Adande, your tank is full. What did we just witness?
I mean, well, it's appropriate that it was 30 years ago today that Reggie Miller scored 8 points in 9 seconds in Madison Square Garden, because we just saw something that really was the equivalent of that, the utter improbability. We also saw on the Cleveland side, the downside of having Donovan Mitchell as your best player, who carried them so far through that game, but the lack of size, I think, played a big role in some of those offensive rebounds as well. But I think you just have to give it to the Pacers and just, they're determined. They're like some, as Bart Simpson would say, some never giving up school principal guys. Like, that's how determined they are. And now we can expect this, right? If you do it twice in a week, it doesn't matter if hasn't been done 3 times.
Or you're expecting another one of these? I don't know. Easy Romeo, some might say. David Dennis Jr. around the horn to you on what we just witnessed.
Yeah, it's not just the anniversary of Reggie Miller's 8 points. There's also today the anniversary of Jordan hitting the shot against Cleveland. So maybe the universe was conspiring for a little bit of magic in all of this. When this first happened to Milwaukee in Game 5, we talked a lot about Milwaukee and the way that they choked that away. But when it happens twice, you have to put the focus on the Indiana Pacers and the way that they execute down the stretch, namely Tyrese Halliburton, who has been merged as the second coming of Reggie Miller in terms of the way that his clutch performance in the playoff have gone. This season, he is 10 for 11 in shots to tie or go ahead in the last 2 minutes of games this season. That is unreal. We have a real-life playoff threat with this Pacers team, especially if the Cavs cannot get healthy in time to make it.
I don't know why I put the algorithm up there like it was such complex mathematics. 10 of 11, which is just
10-11.
Unbelievable. Mina Kimes, what do we witness?
I mean, just clutch greatness. David's absolutely right. I was actually on the show after they did it to the Bucks, and I do remember we talked about the Bucks choking. We talked about how it was like historically unprecedented. Oh my gosh, it couldn't possibly happen again. It happened again, and when that happens, at a certain point, you got to point to the player because it's obviously in Halliburton's DNA. That said, I'm not damning the Cavs the same way I did the Bucks, which is to say I don't think it's a choke job because I think Coach Atkinson is right. They were gassed, and obviously they were missing a bunch of their players. Mobley, Garland, Hunter, and it really started showing up in the fourth quarter. They just weren't able to go up for rebounds. They were taking bad shots. They were playing bad defense, and really this was the result of that.
All right. That's some excuses Cleveland's way. Tim, they didn't attempt a shot in the final 48 seconds. The turnovers. Go ahead, please. Floor is yours.
Yeah, they went the University of Houston route at the end, and that's never good in the final minute when you don't get shots off. But 2011, Rick Carlisle was hailed as something of a genius when his Dallas team beat the first edition of LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. Then he took about a decade off from winning playoff series. Wasn't all his fault. People have been reminded last year and this year he can really coach. His teams are creative offensively. And, man, this team plays harder than any Dallas team I ever remember. That team didn't give up. They're 7 down inside of a minute. And Nembhard and Nesmith and all those guys are just making plays and steals and maybe committing some lane violations, but everybody commits lane violations. So that's not that big a deal.
Okay.
And as you said, Halliburton showing the world he's not overrated.
Donde, back to you. What a shock to the senses for the Cavaliers because they set the NBA record for point margin in a series just a week ago, and now down in the way that they are, 0-2, and half the roster, the MASH unit at this moment. Is it as bad as it sounds, down 0-2, Jay?
It is, and you know, Kenny Atkinson gave a lot of credit to Luck for why they had such a successful season. He didn't say, just give me the credit, I'm the coach of the year. He says, look, they're unlucky right now. The one thing they can take from the past is that the Knicks were able to bounce back from some of those Reggie Miller daggers in the past and either win the series or force it to a Game 7. So it's not complete.
All right, we don't need to go back to the Knicks 35 years ago. David Dennis Jr., is it as bad as it sounds for the Cavs right now?
It's really bad, especially when we look at the fact that Donovan Mitchell may be dealing with his own calf strain. You got to feel for him as well for the season that he's had. And, we have the stats of how bad he does when he shoots more than 30 times. He had 48 points last night and carried that team. And for them to lose in that manner and him have an injury, it's terrible for him.
Terrible. Mina, is there any hope for Cleveland?
Considering the fact that the Pacers were 12-0 this season when they were up 2-0 in series, I'm not feeling good if I'm Cleveland. And then you compound that, of course, with the injuries, which I think got them to this point. That was a game they could not afford to lose, and then they lost.
Is this a clean sweep? Everybody's now on Indiana? Tim, is it over?
I don't think the series is going to be a sweep. I think Indiana's going to win the series. I think Mobley and Garland have to come back and give them a chance. Donovan Mitchell, we saw, can't do it alone.
Mm-hmm. Have you learned nothing from Bill Plaschke in our 23 years of Around the Horn? We'll move on. NFL trade. Cowboys like China in a bull closet, clanging through the NBA and NHL playoffs to give us headline 2. The trade for George Pickens to place him at wide receiver 2 opposite CeeDee Lamb. It was a third-round pick going back Pittsburgh way. Pickens, we all know, has the ability and has had the moments in this league, putting it all together, though, and now he's also on the last year of his contract. Surely we won't hear about that ever again. Tim Cowlishaw, not surprising. It's a splashy move for the Cowboys. Is it a good move?
Tony, I want to get this in once in my 23 years on the shows. The Cowboys did something brilliant. The Cowboys fleeced another team in a trade. I don't think I've ever said that before. Check your tapes going back to 2002. When you can get George Pickens, let's just talk about him on the field. When you can get him as your number 2 receiver, all of a sudden the Eagles' top 2 receivers aren't better than your top 2 receivers anymore. All of a sudden you've caught up to a lot of teams, pretty much everybody, as far as the top 2. Now, is George Pickens terminally unhappy, or was he unhappy in Pittsburgh with the quarterbacks and all the things that went on there, and the fact that Mike Tomlin has trouble dealing with unhappy players? I don't know. If Dak and CD and all these guys can't keep him happy, that's on the Cowboys to do that. It's on Brian Schottenheimer.
You love this move.
He's a terrific player. Their number 2 receiver yesterday was Jonathan Mingo. Today it's George Pickens. That's an enormous difference.
Timmy loves it. Mina Kimes, how about you?
I'm a little bit more tempered in my praise of the Cowboys. I do like it because they obviously needed a receiver, and it was very unlikely they would get one like George Pickens, who over the last couple of years is tied with Justin Jefferson for the most catches on 20 air-yard plus throws. He's a big play machine who pairs really well with CeeDee Lamb and a quarterback in Dak Prescott who likes to throw, aggressive and downfield. But I don't think they fleeced Pittsburgh, because I do think you can look at this from Pittsburgh's point of view and understand why they did it. Pretty similar skill set to DK Metcalf, who they just paid. I don't think they wanted to pay George Pickens. And as good as he is, as good as the raw numbers are, he's up and down. He is inconsistent. I think that drove the Steelers a little bit crazy. They're pivoting to a more run-centric offense, emphasized that in the draft. So I see the vision, even if the quarterback piece of the vision is still unknown.
David Dennis Jr.
This is a very Cowboysian move from the Cowboys. You have a guy who is a great on-the-field person, 16.5 yards per catch, 2,000 yards. Nobody in the league has done that over the last 3 years. But then you have the volatility of who this guy is in the locker room. You got to wonder, Mike Tomlin has dealt with difficult wide receivers before. What does it take for him to move on from one? And going into a contract year and going into a clear number 2 position, you have to wonder what that means for the Cowboys and what kind of guy that brings to the locker room. High risk, high reward. It's very Cowboys.
Donde.
Yeah, Tim, one thing we have discussed in the 2 decades we've been doing this show plenty of times is the Cowboys making a splashy off-season move, particularly or even at receiver, right, with Terrell Owens, who had some of the qualities that David Dennis was talking about. How'd that work out for them? So I'm not overly impressed. I'm not penciling the Cowboys into the Super Bowl, particularly when you have a player that Mike Tomlin said needed to grow up, had some maturity issues, and now he's going to a place where clearly CeeDee Lamb is the number one receiver, right? And Pickens had these issues when he was the guy. Lamb accounted for basically half of the Cowboys' receiving production. How much is going to be left to go around for Pickens and the other receivers and the tight ends, et cetera? I'm not convinced this is going to go over smoothly down and down.
Mina, Tim said it was the best 1-2 combo receivers in the NFL.
Yeah,
you agree with that?
I did raise my eyebrows a little bit. Or he said compared to the Eagles. I think A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Yeah, I think A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith is the better.
Pickens among the best.
But it is very good.
Gets a contested
Very
ball.
good.
That's not the only thing he's contested in recent seasons. We'll take a break here. Buy or sell next. It's the news of the day in the NBA. Steph Curry's hamstring, the latest. Warriors have ruled him out for at least 1 week. So that's at least through game 2, 3, and 4. How Golden State responds without him, we'll see. How they responded last night, 30 minutes played. They were up 10 at one point, got up to 21, won by 11. So that's one thing. The other, how Anthony Edwards had absolutely nothing in the first half, and how Chris Finch sounded post-game about Edwards.
That starts with Anthony. You know, I thought he struggled early, and then you could just kind of see the light go out a little bit. So you're the leader of the team, and you got to come out and set the tone, you know, in all ways that happens. And if your shot's not going, like you still have to carry the energy.
Never want to hear about an Anthony struggling and not carrying the energy and not setting tone. Here we go, Mina Kimes. What you buy, what you sell?
I am buying that it's really good that Golden State won this game, even with Steph injured for much of it, because I don't think Minnesota plays as bad in the next two, particularly shooting from three. I mean, they've just been god-awful, Tony. Over the last 2 games, the worst three-point shooting percentage of any 2-game stretch in NBA playoff history. And this is the team that was... It's something, but this is a team that was 5th overall during the regular season in 3-point shooting. So I think there's going to be some regression there. I think they'll be able to take advantage of Steph being out. So it's good that the Warriors won this one so that they can at least tread water.
DC, do you think this team could tread water 3 games, maybe more, without Curry?
Tread water and get the series to 2-2, and maybe he's back in Game 5. That's maybe the best they can do. I mean, I think Minnesota can play a lot better. I think Chris Finch is absolutely right. I don't think you can call Anthony Edwards a great player as long as he's having games like this. And he has games like he did against Dallas in the conference final where he just disappears. And when his shot doesn't go, the light going out is exactly right. He can't do that. And at the end of the game, the Timberwolves decided to remember, hey, against a small lineup, Rudy Gobert can do a lot of damage. Why don't we get him the ball and he'll get fouled, he'll get rebounds? They got to go to that much quicker again.
Jay, can I start with you on Finch, on Edwards? You've covered the game for 3 decades. To hear a coach say the light goes out on his star player, how'd you hear it?
Yeah, these aren't the type of things you want to be working out in the middle of a playoff series, but maybe we can give some credit to Buddy Hield's defense on him. Hield has been playing pretty well defensively throughout these playoffs, surprisingly, even to his own coach, Steve Kerr. But Hield really is the key if the Warriors are going to survive here. If they can get this version they've had going back to Game 7 in Houston and in Game 1 here, who can be Klay Thompson-ish, and Jimmy Butler can step into the Steph Curry role, maybe they can trade water and get one of these next 3 games. NBA didn't do them any favors, by the way. The Pacers get 2 days off before they play on Friday. The Warriors got to play tomorrow night.
I saw that.
Thanks a lot,
David Dennis Jr.
Yeah, the defense is the key here. You can see the Warriors, especially Steph, early in that game, looked like they had fought in quicksand against that Rockets team, then were on a racetrack playing that defense against Minnesota. Conversely, Minnesota was playing against a paper-mache defense against the Lakers and finally saw the #1 defense in the league since Jimmy Butler got there and had no answer for them. If the Warriors can sustain that defense and really just get 1 or 2 more games, they have like a 3-day break between games 5 and game 6. If they can still be in there by game 6 when Steph could possibly come back, they're really still in this
From
series.
Minnesota's perspective, you said it was the defense in Golden State. On hearing the coach say, our star Anthony Edwards, the light goes out on him, David.
Yeah, that's a problem, and it's true. Anthony Edwards has to fight through when the defense knows how to hone in on him, maybe double team him, and play him tougher than he's seen in the playoffs so far throughout his career.
To the ice last night. Bigger Game 1 result. The Oilers are setting an NHL record as we speak. 5th straight comeback win in the postseason. Unbelievable. That was to beat the Knights in Vegas. Hurricanes Shotapalooza in Washington to beat the Capitals in overtime. Carolina fired 94 attempts all over the ice, 33 on goal, opposed to the 14 on net by Washington. Tim, what's the bigger wow?
I think it's Edmonton with the 5 straight comebacks, and they do it not just, we know about McDavid and Draisaitl scoring goals. They shut down the other team's attack. They used their forecheck to just take Vegas right off the ice. Vegas had 1 shot on goal in the second period. They disappeared after they got that 2-goal lead. That's what Edmonton can do.
Adonde.
The biggest wow to me is Carolina, despite that huge discrepancy in shot attempts and shots on goal, didn't get a shot on goal when they had a power play for the last 2 minutes of the third period. This thing should have been over in regulation, and somehow they've been pestering the net all night, and yet they couldn't get a shot on goal.
But they won the game in overtime. I don't know how that's your takeaway, that they didn't shoot the ball.
Question whether they deserve to, because that was choking right there.
David Dennis Jr., please.
Hey, I'm going to go with a team that actually won, and that's the Oilers, and they are plus 11 in the third period. This is a function of them knowing how to come back. This is not a fluky thing. They've 5 straight after having, struggling in the beginning of these games. This is something that is actually sustainable.
You don't think it's fluky? It's an NHL record, 5 straight comeback wins. Mina Kimes, how about you?
Well, they've been a little bit less dramatic than the Pacers, so I do think that it's not fluky, first of all. Tim, I think, made an excellent point about the defense. I mean, they just had possession the entire second period. And then, of course, the shooting in the third period has been something that's been a continuation of a theme with them. I think it's very likely we see McDavid's team back in the finals.
Tim, you addressed it from the Oilers' perspective. Carolina and the way, the number of shots all over the ice. We only count what's on net, but they were just Shotapalooza.
Carolina has been all over coming close to winning the East for about 5 years now. This could be the year where they actually break through and do it.
Mina Kimes, J.A. Adonde. Not the day for you. It's David Dennis Jr. and Tim Kalishaw. Shut on next.
Here we go.
Knicks Celtics Game 2. What Boston has after Clank City. Most misses in three-point history in the playoffs. Joe Mazzulla's strategy in Game 1 was to shoot their way out. Of course, they didn't. Tim, what should the strategy be tonight, and who you got?
Tony, I've got the Celtics. They're the better team. They're going to win tonight. They're going to win the series. But it gets frustrating hearing Joe Mazzulla say, we shot this number of non-paint twos like that's the greatest violation in the history of basketball. You can't shoot non-paint twos. I guess he couldn't coach Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They will play better. They will hit more of their shots. But their philosophy is a little extreme.
David Dennis Jr.
New rule, if the Celtics shoot 63s again, the game stops. You have to listen to Bob Ryan lecture us for an hour, and then you reconsider the game. The Celtics, I understand you missed 32 of 45 wide open threes. They're going to keep chucking them. They're going to make them. We're going to hate the way watching them play like this, but they're going to win games doing this. I think they win games.
Yes, because they won a championship doing it. No new strategy, I believe it's what I'm hearing from both of you guys. And I kind of, the Bob Ryan reference will give David the point. We'll move on. Showdown 2, Nuggets Thunder. Dose of their own, what OKC has in Game 2. They were Jokic, and then they were Gordon in Game 1. We know how this game ended. It's the position they haven't been all year playing from behind, David. Strategize for the Thunder.
I think the big strategy early on, I think we're going to see Hartenstein on Jokic to start the game. That will hopefully slow him down a little bit. But for me, it's just the late game execution. The the fouling up 3 was bad decision making. Getting Jokic back in the game, bad decision making. If they do better down the stretch, they should be able to win games.
I mean, I think Oklahoma City, like Boston, is a better team, and they're going to be fine. But David's right about the late game fouling. They were fouling them as soon as Denver got the ball in bounds. You're not trying to stop the clock.
Yes.
You're just
That
trying
was
to
the
foul them
problem.
before they
Everybody
shoot
said,
the
oh, you don't
three-pointer.
foul. You got Jokic back in the game. You don't
We had too
foul
many
in the amount of
possessions.
time you did. You have to have time run up. All right, so you both have the Thunder. Wow, I mean, the game of competitive agreement. Here we go. Showdown 3. The roller coaster of emotions at Yankee Stadium last night. Catching an Aaron Judge home run is the thrill of a lifetime. Celebrating with your crew is fun. The ball popping out, not as much fun. Another fan pocketing it on the slide. Look at him. This is great.
Oh.
And then the fan realizes they don't have the ball. How did it all end? Well, the fan was reunited with the ball. Oh, at least a friend of a friend gave it to a friend, and here we are. Back to the original person who, eventually, the person who caught the home run. Tim, what's the moral of the story?
I hate to see this. The guy wore the glove, as you're supposed to if you're going to sit in the front row, but he didn't secure the ball. He let his friend jar it out in the celebration. Luckily, he got it back, but big mistake.
David?
This is like a Christopher Nolan movie. There's so many gaps in the story. I don't know what happened. How did the swiper dude lose the ball? The purple guy get the ball? He gave the ball to the guy who didn't originally catch it. I don't really understand what happened out there.
Well, then I'll give the point to Tim Kalishaw, I guess. 30 seconds of FaceTime, Tim.
We finally have a name for the Utah Hockey Club. They have announced it's the Utah Mammoth. Now, while I'm excited to see the woolly mammoth, or any mammoth, be honored with this, why do they call it the Mammoth? It's supposed to be mammoths. It's not the LSU Tiger. It's not the Seattle Seahawk. It's not the Chicago Bear. Why do we have to do this just because it's the Wild and it's the Kraken? Put the S on the name. There were a lot of mammoths on this planet one day roaming around in Utah. Let's honor all of them. Let's not just make it one. No reason to do this.
Thank you, Tim
Mammoth.
Kalishaw.
Yeti.
That's going to do it, folks.
not Yeti.
Check
They're
out
not
Sarah
bothering
Spain's
so
new book, pre-order right now, Runs in the Family, a story about football, fatherhood, and belonging.